So, in my last lore video, I tried my best to go over the lore and character of the Warrior of Light, or at least what could be applied generally to all Warriors of Light given what's established in the game. Of course, one of the beauties of Final Fantasy XIV is that the game leaves a lot of the lore about the Warrior of Light open to interpretation for the player, so they can construct their own character with their own lore and backstory. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own various headcanons and thoughts for their Warrior of Light, and there is no way I can go over all the possible backstories of every possible Warrior of Light, but I figured I could at least go over the story I've come up with for my own character in Final Fantasy XIV. Hello, I'm the Sald Exarch, and today I will be going over my own Warrior of Light, Mutsuki Yukou. Mutsuki Yukou is a Seeker of the Sun Makote, and was born on the third sun of the fifth astral moon, approximately 30 years before the start of the main story, in a small village in Doma. There isn't an established native population of Seekers of the Sun in Doma in the actual game lore, but given the Seekers' clan dynamics and nature, it wouldn't be impossible for a Tia looking to establish his own tribe to journey to the Far East to do so. At any rate, the Yukou clan no longer operated under the traditional tribe structure of the Seekers, as Mutsuki's ancestors had fully integrated into the Doman family structure and society by the time she was born. This explains her fully Doman name, Mutsuki Yukou, as well as her family, which consisted of her mother, Ayame Yukou, her father, Hayato Yukou, both Seekers of the Sun Makote themselves, and her older sister, Kisaragi Yukou. Both of Mutsuki's parents were warriors through and through, with her mother being an active shinobi who worked closely with the Doman royal family, and her father was a retired samurai who was released from his duties to recover from a serious leg injury and take care of his children. Mutsuki seemed to inherit her parents' boundless energy, quickly gaining a reputation throughout the village as a boisterous, energetic, and somewhat reckless child. Luckily, she had her much more calm and level-headed older sister, Kisaragi, to look after her. Mutsuki lived a peaceful life in the Doman village until the Garleans launched their invasion of Doma when she was only 5 years old. Her home village was in close proximity to the Doman castle, and thus was one of the first villages to be attacked. As a family, Mutsuki, as well as her father and her sister, fled the Garleans as her mother stayed behind, single-handedly fighting off numerous Garlean soldiers with her skills as a shinobi. Seeing her mother fight so fiercely left a strong impression on Mutsuki that would last into her adult life. Unfortunately, Mutsuki's mother did not survive the night of the Garlean invasion, having been overpowered by the numerous Garlean forces. Mutsuki's father strongly desired to take revenge for his wife, and to join other warriors loyal to Doma to form a resistance against the Garlean Empire. But more than that, he feared for the fate of his daughters, Mutsuki and Kisaragi, under Garlean rule. Using his connections with those who would later found the Doman Liberation Front, he fled Doma for the Ruby Sea, and then Hingashi, and after a long journey, he finally landed on the shores of Horizon with his remaining family. Hayato began looking to settle in Holdar to provide a more stable environment for his remaining family, but he and his daughter's statuses as refugees quickly became a problem, much like it would be for the Alamigan and other Doman refugees who would come and try to settle in Holdar much later. However, luck would shine on them, at least a little bit, when they were approached by a wealthy merchant named Iwadi Wawadi. Iwadi, who had seen the skills of a Doman samurai before, offered to vouch and sponsor Hayato and his family to become proper Holdan citizens, in exchange for Hayato's services as a sellsword. Hayato agreed, and would spend much of his time working hard for Iwadi to provide for his family. Iwadi took full advantage of Hayato's difficult position, often paying Hayato much less than other sellswords. However, Hayato felt it was worth it if Mutsuki and Kisaragi were able to grow up in relative peace and protection within the walls of Holdar. While growing up, Mutsuki's sister, Kisaragi, took to studying the ways of the merchants of Holdar, quickly becoming apt at trading and bartering. She would often turn her father's measly earnings into more than enough food for them to live beyond the dregs of poverty. However, this left both Mutsuki's father and her sister busy, and often absent in the young Makote's life. Moreover, Mutsuki did not desire to learn the ways of the markets as her sister did, but instead, being inspired by memories of her late mother's fierce fight against the Garleans, she desired to become a fighter. She would often spend her days watching the Pugilists Guild train under the tutelage of Hammon Holyfist, though she was too young to become a member of the guild proper, nor did she have the money to do so. Instead, she'd watch the moves from afar and practice them on her own. One day, Hammon caught Mutsuki practicing what she saw from the other guild members, and was impressed by her natural prowess. He took her in as a student, training her outside of guild hours and often treating her to street food and sweets afterwards. Their bond quickly grew beyond one of a mentor and a student, with Hammond becoming something of a father figure to Mutsuki in the frequent absence of her own father. This would also have the side effect of some of Hammond's other interests, namely drinks and women, rubbing off on Mutsuki later in life. As Mutsuki grew older, she eventually was able to join the guild proper, learning and studying under them, and quickly becoming one of their star members. However, it soon became clear to her that further growth would require her to journey outside of the Pugilists Guild and the walls of Holdar. When she was 18, she set off to become a fully fledged adventurer, slowly earning herself a reputation around Holdar, and eventually the rest of Eorzea, as a skilled fighter and reliable protector. During this time, she lived the life of an adventurer to the fullest, taking up quests, resolving incidents, reaping the reward in guild and treasure, and using that guild to party and indulge at taverns. She would also funnel some of her earnings to her sister, who would use them to fuel her merchant business and become a successful merchant, allowing their family the money to live more than comfortably in Holdar's walls. This allowed Hayato to terminate his contract of employment with Iwadi. With his daughters grown up, fully established in Holdar, and wealthy enough to stand on their own, Hayato sought to travel back across the seas to rejoin the Doman Liberation Front and fight for his home country. The night of his departure, Hayato invited Mutsuki, who had become a strong warrior in her own right, to join him. While she also had a strong desire to liberate her birthplace, and wanting to avenge her mother, Mutsuki had established many ties in Holdar that kept her in Eorzea. Outside of short skirmishes with stray Garlean forces, it wouldn't be until 7 years later, at age 25, when Mutsuki would finally get a chance to fight against the Empire that had taken her homeland and her mother. Herself, along with countless other adventurers, were recruited by the Grand Companies of Eorzea to participate in the Battle of Carno, a battle that would see her face off against the Garleans in full for the first time. Adopting her mother's look from when she fought the Garleans all those years ago, lining her blue hair with red streaks like blood, she readied to face the Garleans. As Mutsuki was gazing up at the sky the night of the battle, watching the stars, she caught sight of a brilliant star shower and awakened to the echo. She hears Heidelin's Hear, Feel, Think line for the first time, and the strain of awakening the echo is enough to knock her out until the morning of the battle. At the Battle of Carno, Mutsuki notices one of the effects of her new power, catching quick glimpses of what her opponents mean to do and allowing her to avoid their attacks. This allows her to take down Garlean after Garlean as the fierce battle rages on. Despite the skill being unrefined, she proves to be an incredibly valuable asset to the Alliance at the battle. However, despite her newfound skills and the rest of the Alliance's best efforts, Dalamid's descent was not stopped, and Bahamut was awakened. In his fight with Bahamut, Louisoix invoked the power of the 12 and cast a spell on Mutsuki and many of the other adventurers who had fought bravely to prevent the fall of Dalamud. The spell sent them 5 years into the future, meaning that, while Mutsuki was born roughly 30 years ago, she skipped 5 of those years, and is still around 25 years old during the events of Realm Reborn. When Mutsuki reappeared 5 years later, she found herself in the middle of the ocean during a fierce storm. Finding a piece of driftwood, she clung to it for dear life, and managed to survive in the middle of the ocean for 2 days before being picked up by pirates. Unfortunately, those pirates were slave traffickers, and Mutsuki, too weak to fight back against them from her ordeal, was quickly captured. The pirates fed her and gave her water, but kept her in prison along with another group of merchants they had captured to be sold into slavery as well. Mutsuki was taken to the shores of Lenosha by the pirates, but their operation was intercepted by the Rogues Guild, who freed all the prisoners and began fighting back against the pirates. Mutsuki, finally free, and having regained some of her strength, joined the Rogues Guild in fighting her previous captors, managing to take out a good number of them before once again collapsing from exhaustion. The Rogues Guild took her to Limsa Laminza, where she was cared for until she fully recovered. In the ensuing days, Mutsuki realized that 5 years had passed since the calamity, and that her name and reputation as a seasoned adventurer had all but been erased from everyone's memories due to Louisoix's spell. Moreover, restrictions on airship travel meant that she was, for the moment, trapped in Limsa Laminza, unable to return to Holdar and her family. Jack from the Rogues Guild then approached her, offering her a position among them due to her exceptional combat abilities she displayed so soon after being freed from her captors. Mutsuki accepted, both needing to restart her journey as an adventurer, and noticing that there were some similarities between the Rogues Guild fighting style and the combat style of the Shinobi of Doma. Restarting her career as an adventurer takes us pretty much to where we begin with the starting journey of Limsa Laminza in A Realm Reborn. She helps out at Summerford Farms, investigates some disappearances, and meets Y'shtola, Mutsuki's first encounter with any of the Scions. She discovers that Servant is working with the Serpent Reavers, and gets attacked by a mysterious mage and a clay golem, which she dispatches with the help of Y'shtola. She's then asked to help with some cargo for Limsa restoration, and then later asked to help out at the Moraby dry docks, with the construction of the Victory, the Maelstrom's new flagship. They uncover a suspicious plot by pirates, and after thwarting it, realize that it was a ruse by the Serpent Reavers and the Sahagin to attack Swiftperch. Mutsuki joins Y'shtola and an army of Yellowjackets to defend Swiftperch. It is here that Mutsuki encounters the mysterious mage from earlier, who reveals himself to be an Ascian, and summons a gargoyle to directly attack Mutsuki. This would be Mutsuki's first encounter and subsequent defeat of an Ascian. After these events, Mutsuki is deemed a hero and invited to a state banquet hosted by Admiral Merlwyb herself in her honor. It's here that she learns the full truth of what happened. Many warriors disappeared from the Battle of Cardanu 5 years ago, and people's memories are hazy of them. Mutsuki wonders if they'd believe that she was one of them, but before she can decide whether to speak up, she has another vision, flashing back to the Battle of Cardanu, that puts her out of commission. After she wakes up, she's invited by Merlwyb to become her envoy, allowing her full access to the other city-states via airship. She immediately travels to Holdar, worried for the safety of her old friends and her sister, but is shocked when some of the people she grew up around didn't even recognize her. Horrified that she might have been forgotten by everyone, even her close family, she runs to where her sister used to live, and finds that it belongs to someone else entirely. Fearing the worst, Mutsuki frantically searches the markets, unsure of where to even look, when she runs into Kisaragi bartering with a rude Lalafell for high-quality potions. The second Kisaragi sees Mutsuki, Mutsuki's fears of being forgotten vanish, as Kisaragi drops the bottles and runs up to her, hugging her and crying, and asking where she's been the whole time. After the two's heartfelt reunion and a long discussion where they catch up, Mutsuki then makes her way over to the Pugilists Guild, where she's finally reunited with Hammond Holyfist. The two spar, with Mutsuki handedly defeating Hammond, and go out for drinks, bringing Kisaragi along. Mutsuki spends a bit of time in Holdar, catching up with old friends and learning who didn't survive the calamity. After this, she continues along her journey, passing along her message to the Immortal Flames and moving on to Gridania. This is basically where the story of Realm Reborn picks up and is the same for everyone, but there are a few details along Mutsuki's journey I thought were big enough to mention here. Things that don't necessarily apply to all Warriors of Light, but do apply specifically to Mutsuki in terms of lore. First of all, you might have already noticed that this fresh-faced, young Mutsuki Yukou has two things distinctly different about her in comparison to the VTuber model I've been using, and the current version of Mutsuki I play in the game. That's because of two pretty big events that I'll discuss now. The first is the eye, and no, Mutsuki didn't develop heterochromia. Her left eye is supposed to be non-functional, at least partially, though I'll get to that a bit later. This pertains to events in Stormblood, so there's going to be Stormblood spoilers from here on out. You have been warned. During the attack on Rauger's Reach during the events of Stormblood, Mutsuki came running up to the camp and soon realized that Y'shtola had been seriously hurt by Xenosia Galvas. Given that I've definitely shown a pretty heavy preference for Y'shtola, and that Mutsuki is my Warrior of Light, she didn't take seeing Y'shtola so seriously wounded very well. She went into her battle with Xenos in a rage, and got a little too overzealous and reckless. Taking advantage of this, Xenos went in for a substantial blow that Mutsuki only partially managed to avoid. The attack left her with a scar running over her eye, which you can't actually do in the game on a female Seeker of the Sun, and her eye damaged irreparably. From that point on, she began wearing eye patches over it. So, that explains the eye, but what about the hair? Well, this one's going to go all the way through to the end of Shadowbringers, so there are Shadowbringer spoilers from here on out. Basically, this one's pretty simple. Due to the overabundance of light-aspected ether within Mutsuki during the events following the Dungeon of Amarat, Mutsuki almost became a Light Warden. This is true for every Warrior of Light, but for Mutsuki, the transformation wasn't entirely reversed by fusing with Ardbert. Her hair was permanently dyed white, she got some cool new Light Warden clothes, and the transformation kind of partially fixed her eye. But not fully. It's kind of like Y'shtola's Ether Sight, except much less refined and much less clear. More like just the outline of things. Obviously, there's some other details about Mutsuki's story, like her originally being from Doma means that the events of Stormblood, particularly liberating Doma from the Garleans, was a lot more personal than it would be for an Eorzean-born Warrior of Light. And I imagine she would reunite with her father when the Scions meet up with the Doman Liberation Front. And there's probably a bunch of other smaller details that I'm leaving out. But I mostly wanted to discuss the broad strokes here and give you guys an idea of the story I built up for my Warrior of Light. So I'm going to end the video here. Before I do, however, I did want to once again thank you guys for all the incredible support you've been showing me. As I mentioned in my last video, this was more than just a lore video or an introduction to my Warrior of Light. It's also my 1000 subscriber special. You guys have been showing me so much love and support lately, and I can see my audience growing more and more every day. I want to thank you all for sticking around, especially since my upload schedule has been pretty irregular as of late. I'm definitely going to try to focus on fixing that coming up here, with my new goal being to put out a video every week. Thank you all so much for your support, and I hope you continue to support me and watch me as I continue to grow my channel. Also, I did want to remind everyone that I don't just use my model here on YouTube, but I am a proper VTuber who streams over on Twitch. I play a variety of games, including Final Fantasy XIV, and I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 9 PM EST. So do be sure to check me out over there. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I know I had a lot of fun making it, especially since I got to talk about my own personal headcanon and lore surrounding Mutsuki. If you have any questions or comments, do be sure to drop them down below, like this video if you did like it, and subscribe if you want more Final Fantasy XIV content from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Peace out.